Hi, Vision Business Community. It's Dan here. And today we have with us Rob Rossano from Fuel. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what is Fuel?
So my pleasure. And thank you for having me there, having me here, join you today. So I'm a facilitator, and at Fuel, we, long and short, we run a series of workshops, face-to-face, training and facilitation is the essence of our business. But as opposed to talking about any of the credibility, years of experience or industries that we work with, I thought it might be more interesting for the community to perhaps hear a little bit about kind of the journey that we've been on, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely, yeah. I think everybody's journey has been really interesting, and obviously everyone has had certainly some unexpected hurdles to jump over. So absolutely, tell us about yours.
Awesome. And look, we've been around for over 20 years, but for us, there was an interesting point that happened a couple of years ago. Westpac actually approached us, as well as a number of other training providers, and they were curious about what's the future of learning. They were asking us and going, where do we see learning headed into the future? And as we heard what others were suggesting, and a lot of people were moving virtually, how do we do stuff remotely, bite-sized learning, get on, watch a video, all that sort of stuff. It was in that point that we kind of made a bit of a stand. And we felt it was important to draw a line in the sand, and we actually made quite an adamant claim to go, if everyone else is going in that way, we're actually going to go the opposite way. And with a firm belief that everything in business is escalated, is supported by bringing people together. So it was all about delivering those face-to-face, highly kinesthetic, interactive, engaging sessions, workshops, and the like. So that was us. 2 years ago we made that stand. We continued, as BAU for the following couple of years, and then all of this hit us, COVID. So for us, that really changed quite a lot of things, because where everything was about bringing people together face to face. I think it was May 16th. We looked at the diaries, very healthy, full, plenty of work all over Asia Pacific, and again a range of different industries. It was May 17th though that we then looked at the diaries again, and quite frankly, like nothing, and I mean zero. Everything, for one reason or another, and again, all driven by COVID-19. What we found is that people couldn't bring people together, and we found ourselves in quite a challenging spot in that sense, where we needed to pivot, and we took a bit of a point to just reflect quickly and go, we can't keep doing things the way that we always have. And it was the MD. Dean Gale, he said, look, I've got 20 people's livelihood on the line. We can't just sit around and do nothing here. That's not going to serve us. So we pivoted. We had to apply everything that we talked to other organizations and support them with, around remaining agile and having a bias towards action and just getting stuff happening. And we had to apply it all in our own business. And so with a 2-week kind of crash course, it was a massive pivot for us. Learning all about different platforms and different ways that we could still be true to what we were in delivering those high energy, interactive, experiential sessions, but how do we do all of that virtually?
And just also to clarify, and drill down a little bit more on what Fuel does very quickly. You work with organizations, you work with brands, companies, large and small businesses, and you help them to interact in a really effective and quite unique way with their employees and drive results. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, so exactly right. All of it's about driving results or how to be more fulfilled in their work. So I'd say underpinning all of it is about understanding and supporting people around behavioral change. Now that can be, for some organizations, that's a cultural change. How do we shift our business culture and how we conduct ourselves? For others, it's about supporting, let's say, their sales teams, their BD teams, to be more effective in the conversations that they have. Leadership is another big focus for us, but anything that drives change of human behavior, that's where we get involved and support organizations to get the most out of their people.
So how do you go from drawing a line in the sand, to use your words, and having a brand and a product and a message that is completely revolved around face-to-face connectivity to deliver your product and services and achieve the sort of results that you aim for? How do you then transition that to the COVID-19 environment and, doing everything online? And have you transitioned that, and how's it been for you? And what sort of lessons have you guys learned along the way?
Yeah, so some great questions there. I think the important thing for us to recognize was it's got to happen quickly. If we spend 9-10 weeks figuring out, what's the right platform, how do we create these experiences, potentially we've missed the opportunity. And not only that, we'd all find ourselves in a big world of hurt. So what we really needed to do was have that bias towards action and figure it out, and not let perfection get in the way. So it was an element of, okay, we think we've got something. And it was 2 weeks of intense, we had the entire facilitation team, learning, testing, refining, designing, building, they're just an endless process. And every day we have a team get together, connected on Zoom, all of the faces, and just general check-in. It was every morning for the first couple of weeks. There was, okay, someone else going, I've got an idea. I'd love to just test it out and see, get some feedback, see if it works. And we were doing that regularly. Within a couple of weeks, really proud to be able to say, we were able to then create a suite of programs, of offerings, from personal accountability to how to respond to challenges and adversity, something that's very topical for people at the moment, how do we communicate more effectively given some of the restrictions we've got in place, and so on and so forth. But again, one of the big things for us was about understanding what really matters most to us as an organization, and in our offering, what matters most to our clients. And one of those things was about still creating a face-to-face experience. So we've been very particular about which platform we've used, because we still want to be able to see people, connect to people, and make it a personalized experience at every opportunity.
So you found yourselves in this position very, very quickly, as you said. By the second week of March, you were looking at your bookings diary for the following week and wondering how you were going to fit in more appointments. And then the third week, the bookings diary is empty. So it sounds like you've then gone to spend 2 weeks in a crash course on bringing your business online, and actually probably practicing what you've been preaching for the last 20 odd years in your own business and workplace environment. It sounds like you're having team meetings every morning, which you hadn't been doing before. So it took you 2 weeks to transition the business to being online, and what's happened since then? How has it been going?
So once we've got a suite of programs on offer, then it was another key part of our business, our BD team, to go out there and tap into the network that we've built over the last 20 years. So that was about, again, reaching out and supporting organizations. And it's been really interesting because there's a real spread of responses out there from different organizations, where you've got some and some teams, some individuals going, not much I can do, sit around, kind of twiddle my thumbs, on board. And for them and a lot of those organizations, it was about how do we keep people engaged, positive, in the right sort of mindset, given everything that's we've got going on. Some have taken the approach to go, look, here we've got a bit of an opportunity of time, so let's provide some capability development. Let's give them the skills and the knowledge and the attitude that they need to have to be successful in their role in these times and beyond these times as well. So we've got that. On other side of the spectrum, we've got people and organizations who are like, I've never been busier. We are flat out under the pump. And for some of those organizations, they've needed support around helping their people to manage all of that and manage it in the most effective way. So really diverse responses out there. Yeah.
And I think, a lot of the businesses that we've spoken to, part of their challenge has been to transition and find new ways to communicate with their workforce when their workforce is working remotely. And I think that's probably, one of the bigger challenges and one of the bigger issues moving forward from this, even when the lockdown ends and restrictions lift, are, how are individuals and employees, a part of a team, going to continue to interact with their business when this expectation is set up that they can actually already work from home successfully and they didn't have to before. And, it raises the question about accountability, because, and trust and of course, communication. I think there's definitely a feeling out there that workplaces will never, a lot of workplaces will never be the same again than they were, you know, a month or two ago. So in terms of accountability, what I can actually see something on your wall there that says personal accountability. Can we touch on that? Because I think that's probably a really big point, and I think that's probably a big value driver for your area of expertise as well.
Well, and to your point, yeah, I don't think our business is ever going to be the same again. Just like for us, we're never going to play in this space, and then this happened, and all of a sudden we go, you know, we can, and we can do it well, and get great feedback from it. Similarly, there are other organisations going, you know, we don't trust people to work from home, or you've got to be here. FaceTime, face-to-face is important, so that's why you have to be in the office. And I think what's happening here is people are proving, in most instances, that it is possible and it can be done. And so when we do all go back, and hopefully that's not too long, but who knows, you know, I think we're going to see a real shift in the way that people engage their workforce. Now, the topic of personal accountability for us is I think, critical. And we're hearing a lot of other companies say, you know, we need people to take not just responsibility, but accountability, and, you know, they need to be self-managed almost here. You know, it's easy. There's no one else watching us in these environments, or other than the family dog, or, you know, the kids and the like. But so it's perhaps that little bit easier for people to, I'm not necessarily say do less or put in less effort, but, you know, cut corners in some way, shape or forms. For some, that's about, you know, I'm not reaching out and continuing to develop the relationships internally or externally. For others, you know, it varies quite dramatically. But I think we need to, at this time, be really clear around the choices that we have, and that's going to in turn help guide our individual decisions around how we conduct ourselves, and in turn the flow-on effect will be the results that we get. So I think it's a really important topic if we can get people to, you know, take real ownership of their roles, to be accountable and be clear around what they're accountable for, not just results, but perhaps how they get there, how they behave, living their organisational values, and things of that nature.
So, you know, if we sort of take how do you implement something like that in a small scale? And, you know, I imagine the larger scale, the more challenging it is, but how do you implement something like that? Because that all sounds very fancy and, you know, and you know, very romantic, that, you know, but the reality is that is a challenge to implement. Establishing that level of trust for an organisation to have in its workforce is challenging, especially for managers of their teams, especially for managers who are typically hands-on by nature and need to physically touch and see their workforce working. So what are can you share any tips with us about how people and management teams and employees, you know, can create a sense of, or a measurement scale of, personal accountability in their workforce?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting point, because it's not easy to talk about, harder to put into practice and into reality. And I think what we stand by as an organisation is any type of behavioural change, and for some people this is a bit of a shift of how they've operated or how they need to just thinking differently. It comes with a bit of awareness. So, you know, giving people the time and the opportunity to reflect around how they conduct themselves, and, you know, whether or not that serves them. Are they demonstrating the highest possible level of accountability, or are they maybe somewhere in the middle? And I would suggest for a lot of people, and for a lot of instances, you know, you might have a high level of accountability in one area of my work, you know, something else happens. I had an IT breakdown the other day, and I found myself just slightly slipping down that accountability, starting to point fingers, place blame, make excuses to the situation. So, you know, I don't think it's either you've got it or you haven't, but it's about, you know, how do you dial up or down that level of accountability and responsibility, given the situation and the circumstance you find yourself in. Now, in terms of your other point, which is again interesting, a lot of leaders are finding that to be a little bit challenging or confronting, to go, how do I let go in some instances? How do I just trust and believe that my people, they can do it, they will, you know, they will be all right, or they'll reach out for help and support. And, you know, if I can reference very quickly, you know, there's a model of leadership that helps people think about, does the person on the receiving end, do they have the appropriate level of skill, capability, competency, or do they have the right level of will, attitude, drive, motivation around something. And it's not always appropriate to go, do you know what, you're on your own, you're going to be fine, you'll figure it out. That's not always appropriate. There are some instances where you need to provide that support, coaching, mentoring, to get them where they need to be. But when someone's already got that high level of drive, motivation, and then we perhaps micromanage them, or we check up, and all of that sort of stuff, what can sometimes happen is actually we can be the cause of a motivational dip. So I think it's about selecting what's the right person in the right situation to be able to go, I can just let go and trust them. Or the other is to go, what can I do to build that trust in that relationship with that other person, with the other individual? And that's, that's not easy either.
I'd love to touch on just two words that you mentioned there, skill or will, because I think that really resonated a fair bit with me, because in my experience anyway, over the last sort of 20 years working in various, establishments and workplace environments, the combination of the two are quite rare. Normally you find, and I'm like this myself, some days or some weeks or whenever, I perform really well in the skill area, in the technical area.
Yep.
In other areas, I perform really well in the will area, but I lack the technical understanding. So it sounds like that's actually a starting point for part of your approach, where you sort of say, okay, what sort of avatar is this particular individual? Are they strong in the skill area or strong in the will area? Am I sort of onto something there?
Yeah, no, you're spot on, although I'm going to push you for a little bit more detail, because I would suggest that it's not you have good attitude or you don't. You have skill or you don't, right? In reality, it's not as clear cut as that. And so, and when I say that, I also might even add, it's down to the specific situation as well, the specific piece of work. So, Daniel, let's take you as an example, running these. You've run a number of these sessions, right? Conversations in order to support the community. High level of skill. You've done it before. You know what you're doing. You're competent, confident in that space, right? In terms of your will, your motivation, well, driving the business and continuing to engage, connect, and add value to your community and clients, I would imagine you've got a fair bit of drive and motivation in that sense as well. So where you've got both, awesome. Now, if all of a sudden I told you, and sorry, Dan, I don't even know if you're skilled in this, but if I said, I need you to actually do a bit of back-end coding on a program that I'm looking to build at the moment, an application, have you got the skills there, Dan?
Yeah, I'd say, look, I have learned how to delegate reasonably well over the years. So.
Right. So perhaps not having the skill in that, but if I told you that ultimately your job, your livelihood, your business depended on it, or it could propel you to a higher level of success, perhaps the will could be there. So it's the two aren't always connected. It doesn't guarantee I can have the skill and can't be bothered, or I can have the motivation but no bloody idea of what I'm doing. And so it's a really easy thing for for leaders to do is to perhaps think about what are some of the pieces of work, or elements to someone's role, and go, does this person have, really easy, do they have a high level of skill or a low level of skill? Do they have a high level of motivation, will, or not? And to kind of think of it like that.
And it's really interesting because generally speaking, especially, in 2020, a lot of the people in roles in organizations, they've got the role and they've been in the organization, and they generally have a high caliber of the technical ability of the skill. But then I'd imagine it's their motivation that will fluctuate, and is, a skill is, I can go and learn how to code. I can do a course online, I'm sure in a number of weeks or months or whatever. But if I don't have the motivation to then go and use what I've learned to execute on the product, well, the skill really means nothing. So I imagine that the motivation is actually a lot harder to find the right trigger points, and is a lot more dependent on, individuals and finding the right trigger points in individuals.
Yeah, and to your point, linking it back to personal accountability, I think, what perhaps the conversations that some leaders or organizations need to have is actually to go, what are you doing? It's not always the leader's responsibility to hey, I'm gonna support, and support is one thing, but I'm gonna spoon feed you every time. That just doesn't serve. What we need is for individuals to go, hey, I'm responsible for my own output, for my own motivation, my own skill, and hey, I need a hand. So give me some skill, or do you know what? I'm feeling a bit of a motivational dip at the moment. So just want to be transparent around that. And again, trust is a challenging one. There's almost a bit of a loop around it. When I trust someone, often what we see is more open communication, more vulnerable. People admit fault, mistakes, they ask for help, they reach out for support. And yet when there's open communication, we trust each other more. Same works in reverse though. If I don't trust you, I keep it all to myself. And because I don't share, people sometimes question, can they be trusted? Right? So we've just got to break the circuit.
There's just so much value that I think, Fuel and facilitators like yourself can add to the current landscape, because I think the tendency is for a lot of businesses and a lot of owners and a lot of teams who are working remotely, and perhaps, their hours have been reduced, or, they've been stood down for a period of time. The tendency is, I think, to, bury their head in the sand and actually do the opposite, not communicate and wait for things to sort of start to come back to normal, and just use the lifting of the social restrictions as the measurement, as to say, hey, this is when we go back to work. But actually there's so much that can be done even in this down environment, about understanding new ways to communicate within a team, within an organization. And I think the businesses that have found ways to do that are going to come out thriving, absolutely thriving.
To your point, Dan, just this. How often do you, or do anyone tuning in? How often do we go, I wish I had a little bit of time? How many of these projects, initiatives, ideas would I love to get to do, and I think would add real value to our business or to our clients, but we just never get around to doing. Here, you're in a downtime, that's a perfect opportunity to go, I'm actually going to harness this. I'm going to take accountability. I'm going to drive it, and I'm going to make something of it. And if you're busy, it's to go, well, how do we make the most from this busyness? How do we really get the opportunity from everything that's going on?
Mm-hmm. I think everyone's really focused on how do I, when can we start bringing some money back, some real money, back into the door? When can we generate those sorts of revenue and performance that we, pre-lockdown, pre-COVID-19? And I think that ultimately will be a byproduct of, businesses' ability to transition, to communicate in new ways, and to, I think the revenue will be a byproduct of the business's ability to operate in a new way overall. In terms of personal accountability, and just touching on that a little bit more, because before we spoke, you mentioned that you're doing a webinar around the 21st of May. Is that right?
So I'm only going to correct you on the term webinar, because part of the challenge that we get it, and it's out there very clearly.
Okay.
We went, how do we create these virtual experiences? How do we deliver these sessions to organizations that break all of the stereotypes about webinars, right? And it's the classic, I log on, I have a snooze for 90 minutes or however long, and then I wake up, oh right, okay, cool, yeah, good, that time passed quickly, which was not what we were trying to achieve. So I'm sorry, it's a slight detail, but I think it's important because ultimately it drives the mindset as people approach it.
No, love it.
So sorry, what was the question again?
So we've got an event. We've got an event that is a virtual face-to-face event. Is that a better description?
Yeah, I'll take that. Virtual face-to-face event. So the one that we've got coming up, and in our conversation, I figured, as opposed to talking a lot about, what it is and the way that we're creating these online experiences, again, highly interactive, experiential, engaging, kinesthetic, even we're getting people up and moving and doing all sorts of stuff, that all links back to some, underlying outcomes and principles. We figured it was just perhaps would be a nice value add, and give people an opportunity to just experience it firsthand. So the one that we've got coming up is personal accountability, to give people an opportunity to jump on, get hands-on, dive into the subject, experience it, and think about how that can then apply to their business, to themselves, to get the most out of this situation.
Okay, so just to clarify, that is you, Vision Business Community. You are invited. we will we will promo this and post a couple of links over the coming week, just so that everyone's really clear on the time. I'll personally make sure that I'm there. It sounds really great, and if your back is as stiff as mine over the past couple of weeks, sitting on the couch or in your chair, then definitely get up, get kinesthetic, get moving. So Rob, just quickly, did we say that was going to be on the 21st?
Yes, 21st.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. I can't thank you enough for joining us, and just sort of sharing your ideas and really sharing your energy. I mean, your energy is just off the charts. So it's just fantastic and I think it's so critical in the landscape today, because generally everyone's a little bit more introverted at this time, and I think just bringing energy to a room for me has been very, very uplifting. I'm going to jump out of my chair in a minute and have a little walk up the street and just digest some of the lessons that I've learned speaking to you today. And just can't thank you enough for joining us, Rob. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, having Phil a part of this, and looking forward to seeing as many people as take us up on the opportunity to join us for Personal Accountability on the 21st.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vision Business community, so much for watching, everybody. That's Rob from Fuel. Links will be and contact details will be down below as well. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.